Hello and welcome to episode 13 of our podcast, Smart Consulting Sourcing, the podcast about consulting procurement. My name is Hélène and I'll be your host today. Each week, I'll give you the keys to better use, manage, and source consulting services. In this episode, I'll explain how to find new consulting providers for your project. So last week, I listed the main pitfalls when writing an RFP, and the first pitfall I mentioned was to not write an RFP. That was the main mistake. But recently I had a discussion with Joe O'Mahony, the professor at Cardiff Business School and leading authority on consulting. And he reminded me that building an RFP is not always the only way to go. And sometimes it's important to understand what are your options before defining your requirements. And the way to do that is to look at the market, find potential consultant, and then enter an RFI process and co-build the RFP with them. So that was a very relevant remark. And I would say that you can absolutely look for a consultant before or after writing your RFP, depending on how well you are clear on your needs. But the very step of finding new consultants, regardless of where you stand, is to define your criteria of search. So what are the things I'm looking for? And what type of consultant I want to find? But where to start? What are those key markers that I need to look at? So the first thing is the capabilities. So, which is, what do they do? And some examples are, strategy, operations, Six Sigma, branding strategy, and so on. Another marker is the industry experience. What industry do they work in? It can be retail, glassmaking, process industries, oil and gas, etc. The footprint and the geography served, where they are based, and where they can deliver. And sometimes you can add the language requirement to that. The credibility of a company is also important. The brand, the thought leadership they produce, their partner profiles. This is something that can really be a differentiator between different consulting firms. They sometimes look the same on paper, but through reading their thought leadership and looking at their partner profile, you can get a sense of exactly who they are. And another example is culture. Business and management culture change from one country to the next. And it's important sometimes to work with local consultants in order to make sure you maximize the chances of success of your projects, because your team will be more sensitive, accepting of a consultant that has the same culture than they do. So there were examples of criteria, and now that you have your list of criteria, you can start prioritizing them and, start searching. So how do you do that? Where do you search? So the first step is, of course, to look at internal sources. And that can be a list of preferred providers. That can be recommendations from colleagues or your network. And that can be a database of previous project RFPs, anything that's internally can give you some names and contact information. And then you can start looking at internal sources. So that can be directory of consulting firms, that can be articles and books written on the field you're interested in. That's a very good way to identify ideas or new methodologies or approaches that you would like to try on. And actually, you can find both those two informations on our new platform, conavigo.com. I invite you to have a look. We're still rolling out. So, really, really open to any feedback you could provide. Another source can be a list of professional associations in your industry or in the capability you need. And finally, Google Search is my friend, or Quant, or DuckDuckGo, whatever your religion is in terms of search. But this is also a very powerful tool to find new consultants, in particular when they're very niche. So now you can look at, on one side, the consulting firm that you found, and on the other side, those key markers that you had identified, and really compare those two and build that first list of potential providers. And the size of that list will really depend on the size of your project and its strategic importance. In other words, when you're in a small project with little impact or visibility, you can have a very short list, while when you're a very big project, you might want to have a quite important list. So now that you have your list, and they seem to fit those criteria that you have defined, but you have to kind of screen the specifics to make sure that the fit is good. So the first thing to do is to look at the background of the founders. Very often, it gives you the core capability of that company. It also gives you an information about what type of consultant you're looking at. Another thing that you need to look at is thought leadership. So beyond the article that you found, did they write other thing? Who wrote it? What are they new? Are the documents new or recent? Do they have case studies that relate to that thought leadership or to the type of project you're looking for? Another interesting information about a consulting firm is the partner profile. Are they former executive? Are they lifelong consultants? It's really interesting to understand how they operate and who you need to talk to, because what you're really looking for is the right partner that you will contact and start talking to. Well, actually, the first thing that you want to do is listen to them. You want them to explain to you what they do, how they do it. And that's the way you can learn about their culture, their approach, and their range of expertise. You also need to make sure that all the criteria that you had identified as important, check. You need to make sure that they're a good fit for all those criteria. At that stage, I recommend not sharing too much about the project. It's an exploratory call. It's not a briefing, and you don't have an NDA. You didn't sign a confidentiality agreement. So what you're looking for is really the expertise, the past experience that is a fit for you, and a few details about who could be on board of the team in charge of the project. But you can give them visibility on the likeliness of the project and the potential timeline, and also give them an idea of the budget. If you don't have a specific number, you can always give some sort of range. Say it's a small budget, it's a large budget, it's a strategic project, anything that can help them assess the size of the opportunity for them. I always recommend also at that stage to check references. It's good to do it when you are working on a specific project and you know what you want to check, but it's also interesting, to get to know what their former clients say about them. And these references have to be personal. It's a partner that you want to work with, and that's the partner you want to hear from former clients. And again, I mentioned it's great to have references that are relevant, real project, similar project, and if possible, recent. And by recent, I mean less than 3 years. And of course, you want excellent feedback. You want to work with the best. So there are many ways to identify potential consulting firms, but what is important really is to make sure that they are a potential fit for your project and for your organization. I hope that you're now better prepared to explore the consulting industry and broaden your pool of potential suppliers. Well, that's it for today. My next podcast will be an interview of Laurent Thomas, my co-author of Smart Consulting Sourcing. He's a former senior partner, Oliver Wyman. He's currently EVP at Solvay. And we will discuss about where to focus in the consulting sourcing process. In the meantime, if you have any questions or want to learn more about what we do at Consulting Quest, just send me an email at hélène.laffitte with 2 F's and 2 T's at consultingquest.com. Bye and see you next week. Au revoir.